Our next speaker is a Mercy Malaysia volunteer since 2001 who has served in conflict zones and disaster sites. He came up with the idea of a digital immigration form in 2014 while brainstorming for a global impact competition in Silicon Valley. Upon returning to Malaysia, he started Border Pass, and in 2016, the company installed its first immigration auto gate in KLIA 2 that is equipped with facial recognition and contactless fingerprint reader. The potential of Border Pass's innovative solution has been recognized globally with 7 international awards under its belt. Currently serving as a director at Sunway Group's Digital and Strategic Investments arm, he is here today to talk about the lessons he learned from travel through humanitarian work, travel tech, and migrant workers. Please join me to welcome Faizal Arif.
All right, thank you, Edmund, for that very kind introduction. And thank you, Khazanah, for the invitation to talk. First off, in case you Google the hit, I'm not the 1MDB Faisal Arif, that's another guy. Please don't arrest me. I'm just unfortunately named. Anyway, my talk is about lessons that I've learned from 3 journeys. 20 years ago, I volunteered with a little startup NGO called Mercy Malaysia, and I started right at the bottom on warehouse duty, sorting out through donations of expired food, single shoes, socks, and underwear. But thanks to my hard work and intelligence, I quickly rose up the ranks and I was promoted to driver, shuttling donated medicines from one warehouse to another. The hours were long, but we loved the work because there was a war in Afghanistan at the time, and we all wanted to do whatever we could do to help out. Soon after, Mercy needed volunteers to go to Kandahar. But at that point in time, their volunteer base was predominantly women. And Afghan men are notoriously reluctant to deal directly with women. So Mercy asked a 20-year-old boy to do a man's job. I jumped at the opportunity. Naturally, my parents were equally thrilled. And Dr. Jamila had to personally call them to curb their enthusiasm. My dad's actually there right now. It's his 73rd birthday today, so happy birthday, Papi. Yeah, he's not going to stand up. Anyway, so off we went to Kandahar. That's me fourth from right. And the reality is that as a non-medical volunteer, my main contribution was buying sheep in bulk from a market, herding them into a mud compound, and enlisting refugees to help butcher and distribute the meat to the refugee camp. I remember being up for nearly 48 hours without sleep, smelling like sheep. And at that moment, I reflected on my journey from warehouse laborer to driver to shepherd. I felt like my career progression was in a good place. But jokes aside, our volunteer doctors were the true heroes. They saw hundreds of patients and would cry in the desert during their breaks so that they can get back to work after. And frankly, what we saw was heartbreaking. I will never forget a hospital at the Pakistan-Afghan border that had a room full of children missing limbs from landmines and unexploded ordnances. The saddest ones weren't the ones who were crying in pain, it's the ones who had stopped. There's this stark difference of opportunities in this photo. I was very fortunate to later go to the UK for my university, the US for my master's on a Fulbright. I got to intern at the UN in New York, Department of Disarmament Affairs. I even got to work at the World Bank for a short while for a gentleman named Paul Volcker, former chairman of the US Federal Reserve, slayer of inflation. Now, these are opportunities that these kids could never dream of. And what I learned from this journey is that in many ways, our fates had already been predetermined in the womb. Our parents, our educational, economic opportunities, our nationality, these are things that are completely out of our control, but they have an outsized influence on outcomes in our lives. Therefore, if you're doing well, it's good to remind yourself that you are where you are not solely from your hard work and intelligence, but luck. We shouldn't endeavor to make ourselves better than other people. We should endeavor to do better for other people. Okay, second story. Fast forward to 2014. My friend Soraya sends me a link to a startup contest. The prize is a place on a technology accelerator program in Silicon Valley, housed on NASA Research Park. That's all I remembered. I wanted to go to NASA Research Park since I was about this high. So to win, you have to come up with an idea that could benefit 1 million people from your region. I traveled a bit back in the day, and I noticed that border control is probably one of the last areas in the world that hasn't been touched by technology in a meaningful way. I mean, we still fill up these old-timey immigration forms, hasn't been revolutionized since the days of Casablanca. So I thought, what if we could send our passport information to the destination country the moment we book our flight, and so that they can do all the background checks that they need before you arrive in the country. And if you have a clean slate, you get to go through an automated gate instead of queuing at immigration. And imagine if we had a network of these gates talking to each other at airports all around ASEAN. I send this idea off. Some weeks later, I get an email telling me I'm a finalist and I have to attend the in-person pitch. Slight problem, I was literally in the middle of nowhere representing Malaysia on an Antarctic expedition sponsored by Prudential, and I wasn't due back until the day after the pitch. So I asked our expedition leader, Sir Robert Swan, could I hit back earlier? There's a Russian base, Bellingshausen, I can probably get a plane there. He said, bad idea. It'll cost thousands of dollars and there's a Category 4 storm on the way. But he's not the type to give up easily. After all, he's the first person crazy enough to walk to both the South Pole and the North Pole. So Sir Robert said, meet me on the ice, bright and early tomorrow morning, we'll shoot a video instead. What I did not expect was him opening and closing my pitch. We somehow compressed this video and then emailed it off using a satellite connection, but the judges later told me that I didn't win because of Sir Robert's cameo or my dumb idea. They said they gave it to me because of the cute penguin in the background. So thank you, unnamed penguin. So anyway, off we went to Singularity and NASA. It's a place mired in controversy, but back then it was a fun place. Cut a very long story short, we formed a team, we built a prototype. It's housed in wood. I was responsible for the shoddy carpentry with Andrew, but the guts were awesome. It had a passport, palm vein, fingerprint reader, plus a thermal camera and 3D face recognition. Now, Breno was our tech whiz who integrated all these devices together in just a very short space of time. He may not be the tallest, but he's an absolute giant of a software engineer. That's the first time it worked, and we were very, very pleased that worked. So after the program, I came back to Malaysia, and I started pitching the idea around. We started calling it Border Pass as well. We did 3 presentations at the Economic Council before the Prime Minister, getting the approvals that we needed. Then we built the world's first immigration autogate equipped with 3D face recognition, contactless fingerprinting, thermal cameras, even before the pandemic, proudly designed, developed, and built in Malaysia. We then, thank you, one guy. Hey, all right, okay. Anyway, we installed it at KLIA 2 in 2016. We beat Singapore's Changi Terminal 4 facial recognition deployment by a whole year. They put Singapore in there. Now, most importantly, we reduced wait times at immigration for foreign tourists and business travelers from over an hour to just seconds. So we went on to win 8 international innovation, technology, and industry awards, including an APEC award. But anyway, in 2018, as you know, there was a small change in upper management in Malaysia. The new government decides to go X-Men on everyone and everything and cancel everything, including Border Pass. I then go on to irritate every minister with a pulse by writing letters explaining that we won several awards, our users love us, and whatever approvals that we've won were received on merit without paying a cent in bribes. After 1 year, the minister decides to reinstate us, but before it's put into force, we have yet another change in government. Meanwhile, a tender went out to upgrade Malaysia's immigration system, which included many of the core technologies and ideas that we pioneered, but unfortunately, according to the rules, Border Pass is too small to participate. Finally, after our nth appeal, the government wrote to us earlier this year telling us thank you very much for inspiring work, but we've already gave the work to another company for 1 billion ringgit. But it was never about the money. You see, when I started this, I really wanted to change the world. Now, I just want to leave the room with a little dignity. But if Malaysia ends up with a better immigration system and contactless airport in the future from our ideas, which we're seeing now with AirAsia's Faces and Malaysia's airports, KLIA contactless experience, then maybe that's our little dent in the universe, and I'm okay with that. So some lessons I learned. With tech, trust but verify. A lot of people think Border Pass is a facial recognition company, but we're not. And I hate election season because that means people send sex tapes to us. But what we are good at is auditing facial recognition systems and figuring out which is the best to use in any given application. Accuracy is a major component of that. Here's an example of a facial recognition system that we audited. We were told is 99% accurate. That's my face on the left with more hair. And on the right are all the faces the facial recognition system matched with mine. Remember, this is 99% accurate. It just gets progressively more bizarre. Now, I hear a lot of you laughing, but you shouldn't, because this company managed to get a board seat on Khazanah. So yes, trust, but verify. Swiftly moving on. So Malaysia needs better privacy enforcement. This is very, very important. Biometric tech is great for convenience, but whoever holds our data can misuse it very easily. Malaysia has had an alarming number of data breaches over the last few years involving the private sector and also the government, and we now see a rise in online fraud cases. The PDPA 2010 is very well drafted, but can anyone in this room tell me how many PDPA investigation and enforcement officers we have in the whole of Malaysia? The answer is 8. So I hear there's a budget in a few days. Might like to sneak a few more officers in there. Finally, manage your expectations. The joke in Malaysia is that you can do anything you put your mind to unless somebody's son-in-law wants to do the same thing. Now, this is among the reasons why we're losing talent to neighboring countries. There's never been a shortage of intelligence, innovation, or ingenuity in Malaysia. The only ingredient that we're short of is integrity. Okay, final story. This is also about a journey, but it's not one of mine. You see, I spent a lot of time at airport immigration over the last few years, and at the corner of my eye, I couldn't help but notice the rows of migrant workers seated on the floor waiting for their employees to be picked up. And whenever I hear the term nation builders, frankly, these foreign workers are the first people I think of in my mind. Because if you think about it, our tallest skyscrapers, our MRT, our homes, our schools, this hotel we're in right now, even repairs on our parliament building, all built by their hands. So then during the lockdown, this ad pops up on my feed. I'm not a researcher, economist, or sociologist, but I am bored at home. So I write in, somehow get a job. And after doing that research, here's the hypothesis that I want to share with you today that I hope is relevant to Khazanah. First of all, I'm sure you're aware there's a bit of a labor shortage right now in Malaysia. At 3.7% unemployment, there are very few Malaysians willing to work so-called 3D jobs. The few who are willing go to Singapore, where they can earn 11,000 ringgit washing dishes. So we have to turn to migrant labor. Unfortunately, Indonesian laborers, who represent the largest chunk of our foreign worker workforce, 40%, they no longer want to come here to work because their GDP per capita per month is now 15 ringgit lower than our monthly minimum wage. So we have to rely on other nationalities, such as Bangladeshis, who are made to pay up to 20,000 ringgit in migration expenses to even come to Malaysia to work, usually paid by taking on debt. Through the magic of compounding, the interest rate, according to the NUS, on these loans are about 7 to 10% per month, right? And through the magic of compounding, a monthly 7% interest rate on a debt of 20,000 ringgit balloons to 1.1 million ringgit by year 5. And if the monthly interest is 10%, that becomes a 5.5 million ringgit bill at the end of that period. Remember, these are uneducated foreign workers. They're not CFAs, they're not CPAs, they're not CAs, they're not MBAs. These are rural folks, farmers and laborers. Even Touch and Go's controversial Go Pinjam interest rate is nowhere near this high. So, yeah, basically migrant workers are designed to fail in Malaysia. Workers who come illegally will, in all likelihood, overstay, become illegal to pay off this impossible debt. Why should we care? Well, consider that the MEF has said that a 1,500 ringgit minimum wage predominantly goes to foreign labor. And add to that, according to Bank Negara, cheap foreign labor acts as an anchor for the wages of the poorest Malaysians in Malaysia. It's still below the 2,208 poverty line, household poverty line in this country. Should we be surprised then that only 3% of Malaysians can afford to retire at such wages? Oh, but Faisal, poverty line, that's a household thing. If mummy and daddy works, then there's 3,000 ringgit. Well, sure, but if both husband and wife work just to stay afloat, don't be surprised if households are reluctant to have children even if they want to. And with fewer children, Malaysia is becoming a rapidly aging society. While Japan and Europe are welcoming immigration, we're doing this fantastic job kicking everyone out. Two things from the chart on the right. Firstly, we have lost 19% of our non-citizen population since 2018. That's 630,000 people. Secondly, if you strip out non-Malaysians from our population growth, our population is only growing at 1% in 2021, down from 1.6% in 2010. We are on a high-speed train towards the same direction as Japan, where the sales of adult diapers are higher than baby diapers. Malaysia needs to wake up. We're no longer the destination of choice for migrants. Labor costs will keep going up. And this is a worrying trend for businesses because cheap migrant labor is hard-coded in many of their business models. For you ESG practitioners, enthusiasts out there, here's a laundry list of things that we can do better. Everything in this list, yes, is inflationary, but maybe that inflation will allow the poorest workers, Malaysians and migrants, to provide for their families, and also force companies to seriously look into investments into automation. Now, to wrap things up, I'll just say that we have an election around the corner, apparently, and my hope is that we get leaders who will stop treating our immigration system as a big ATM machine. Wishful thinking. But a more realistic wish is for Khazanah to seriously look into quantifying its migrant workers and its subsidiary companies, either hired directly or indirectly, and systematically eliminating indenture and ensuring that they have a mathematical prospect of generating savings through a living wage. Let's try and make that a core ESG initiative for 2023. Because when the governance of government is weak, then maybe corporate governance needs to take the mantle of leadership. And we shouldn't make things better simply because of American sanctions. We should have higher standards because we are a nation of immigrants, and being Malaysian should mean that we are better than this. So I'll leave you with that thought. That ends my sermon for today. My views are my own. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you so much.